Good afternoon. Welcome back, everyone. You should see my screen. So I am on the usual repository for the training, and I'll open it in my Gitpod environments. Today we are building the project number 2. Okay, let's go. What is the link to this website? You mean Gitpod? So it's the main Gitpod, gitpod.io. If you want to access the website directly, it's called Gitpod. So gitpod.io is the link to the main website. The project for today, you will find it in day 2 project and project.markdown and main.motoko. So today it's about building bones. We are building a data structures for our members. So can quickly look at the story. You realize that the power of the academy is not in the code, but in the people. And so you understand that if you want to thrive, if you want your DAO to thrive, you will need to build bonds and to enable fellow students to join as members of your DAO. So the requirements for today, you need to make a DAO where anyone is able to join and create a member profile. We'll see what is the member profile. Members can leave the DAO by deleting their profile, and users are authenticated and can only modify their own profile. So we will also implement authentication system today. And oh, I guess this is supposed to be types.motoko. For the first time, we have 2 files. So you can see we have the main.motoko file, but we also have the types.motoko file here. I can show you. And this contains the type that we need for today. So there is going to be the hash map. Actually, it should be, it shouldn't be, it should be like this, but that's, yeah. It's a little bit strange, but that's okay. So you have this hash map type, you have the result type, which we will discover today, and you have the member type, which is the new type that we have created. So it's a custom type, which is an object with 2 fields. The first, the name of type text, and an age of type natural number. Those types are imported in our main file. So here you can see that you have imported the types, which is actually the type file. So this is how you import a custom file directly in your code. Notice that you don't need to have the .motoko file extension because, of course, Motoko knows that you are importing Motoko files, so it's not necessary. And then you have those types, and you have the structure for the function. So add member, get member, update member, get all members, number of members, remove member. Quite a few functions to implement today. We will use the result type. as I've said, the result type, there is a results module if you want to look at it. I should have added the link to the documentation, but you can find it. So Motoko result here, this one. Of course, also we have the hash map. Oops, it's here. And yeah, so that's about it for the explanation. Then it's all about defining a hash map, using the hash map um, to add member, get member, update member, get all members, and so on. And you should have this interface at the end of today. You can also take a quick look at the correction because there is a new concept that we haven't seen so far. Unfortunately, I wanted to talk about it, but it was too short. A principal which represents the identity of the person calling. So here you have the caller, which is a principal. This is how you will authenticate different users. Whenever you send a message to the IC, the message can be signed or not. And if it's signed, it's going to be providing an information on the person that's calling this method. So you can usually you can use this caller principal as the key for your hash map so that you can store for each principal a different user, and the principal is unique for each user as a unique principal. So that's about it. I'm not gonna give more information. Now you should be able to implement some of those functions. I'll give you 25 minutes and then we'll correct that. So good luck, everyone, and see you in a few minutes. All right, welcome back everyone. So we are just on time. I'm going to correct the project. I'm curious if you've successfully implemented all the methods. If you haven't, I'm also curious to know why and also what's the most complex part. So if you're stuck with the first question or maybe the second one, I'm curious. Okay, let's jump into the correction then. So the first task is to implement an immutable variable members. So let members, which will be of type hashmap principal. So this is how we can write it if we want. And this is where we will store the members of our DAO. So we have already seen how to implement an hashmap earlier this morning. And we need to specify the initial capacity, the key equalities, and the key hash. So this morning our keys were a natural number, but this afternoon we actually have principal as keys, which will be slightly different. So here we go. Initial capacity will be 0. And then we have to figure out this hash and equality function. For that, a reflex that you should have is to look into the module corresponding to your key. So this morning we had NAT as keys, so we could look into the NAT module. We also had to look in the hash module. And for the principal, we are looking into the principal module. If you had a key that is a text, you understand that you would probably have to look into the text module and so on. And so if we take a look here, we have a function that is dot hash. So that sounds great. We have principal.hash, which takes a principal and returns a hash. So we will probably use this function. And we also have the equal, which takes two principal and return a Boolean corresponding to the equality of those principal or not. So that sounds pretty good. We have already found our function. So principal.equal and principal.hash. And we have our hash map ready to be used. Okay, of course, make sure to have the import and just one line is enough. Now that we have our hash map, we can use it to implement our function. So add member, get member, and so on. We'll start with add member. So add member is a function that takes a member of type member. So here, this is our member. Adds the member to the members hash map. That's a lot of members, but those are different ones. So members hash map. The function should check if the caller is already a member. So the caller is the person calling this function, and we need to check if he's already a member of our DAO. To do that, we need to look inside the hash map if there is already a principal member associated with the principal of the caller. So just a quick explanation of what this syntax means. Public shared caller. I've seen a few questions already. So when you want to access the caller, so the person that is calling your method, and it can be like another canister, it can be a user, this person has an identity. And so this identity, you can access this identity with the syntax shared, then parenthesis, brackets, caller. You could also write it like this. I'm going to show you. Essentially, what you do is that you access the message. The message is an object that contains only one property, which is a caller property. And the caller is the caller property is a principal. So essentially, you can write it like this, it's destructuring the object for you, and then you can access the color directly here. So this is a syntax we will use a lot, and you just need to know it, that it's like this. If you want to access the color, you need to write your function like this. If you're still confused by what is the color, you will see that when I do some examples, it will be very, very clear what it is exactly. So now I'm going to use the hashmap methods. Hashmap.get on the color. No, members.get. So members.get color, essentially I'm looking into my hashmap if I have a member that is corresponding to this principle. And so now we can again do a switch case, and we have two cases. We have the case where there is not a member and the case where there is a member. So we should return a result type, and I agree that this is a lot of new concepts. So if you struggle to implement this function, it's normal. I think once you understand the pattern, it's very replicable. This is a syntax and a pattern that you will see in a lot of Motoko code and a lot of context. The result type is a new type that we haven't talked about today, but it's essentially explained in the results. Oops, in the result module, it's here. So a result is either okay or error. It's used to propagate errors, and those are errors that are handled by your code. So it's not like trap, which is another type of error that we will see later. But the error by the result type are handled by your code, and you can return okay or error, depending on which case, to indicate to the users or other canisters that there is something that is not good. So for example, in our case of add member, we can return a result, which is going to be either a unit type or a text that corresponds to, so let me show you. That corresponds, the first type corresponds to the type of the OK object, and the other type to the error object. Essentially, okay, let's go through an example. It's gonna be easier to understand than. If we don't have a member, we can do members.add, members.put. So we put the member inside the hashmap, and then we return OK. And we don't put anything inside the OK. It's just parentheses. If we already have a member with this principle, we will return something like you are already registered into this DAO. So now I'm going to deploy this. And I will just add one function. So I've created this who am I function just to show you what the color looks like. Remember that when we are using the fx, so maybe I should zoom a little bit more. I hope it's clear. When we are using the fx, we have an identity. So the fx identity get principal will give me my current principal. So this is my principal here. It corresponds to my identity. And so if I call the fx canister call playgrounds and then project2 and then the name of the method, so who am I? It's going to return my principal because it's going to return the color. As you can see, this is me calling this method. But if I change my identity, like test1, so I create a new identity. Okay, it wants a passphrase, so I create a passphrase. Then I use this identity. So with the fx, we can change defix identity use test1. So I'm using this identity. Now, if I look at my principal, it's going to be different because again, each principal has a different principal. What did I say? Each identity has a different principal. So here, and now I think you've probably guessed that if I call the whoami method, so if I copy this line, fx canister called playground, you will see this principle appear here. Okay, and now if I defix identity use defix identity list, so I'm going to go back to default, defix identity use default. Now if I call this method, so add member, I need to send a member. So to send a member, I will use the candid syntax. So record, this is a little bit complex, but record, I need to specify the name and the age. And I think it should work. Call project 2. So this is the canister that I'm calling, and this is the method that I'm calling, and this is the argument for the method. So I haven't used this canister yet. So for the first time, it's saying okay. But now if I try to call this canister again, it should tell me I'm already registered. And as you see, I'm already registered. Now, if I use my identity test and I call this with another, let's say another member. So let's say now my name is Ben. This time it's going to work again because now I'm calling the caller is my new identity. So I can have a member for this identity, but again, I can only have one. And if I try this method again, this time it will tell me that I'm already registered. So this is the concept of caller, and it can apply anytime. It can apply from anywhere you're calling the canister. It doesn't matter if it's from the terminal, if it's from the Candid UI, from a front end. You always have this concept of caller. Now let's go back to our code. So implement the add member, implement the get member. So the get member, and we can actually remove that. So just comment that out. Get member, which takes a principal and returns the corresponding member. So if you followed so far, this is going to look very similar. We will do a switch case on the members.get. This time we don't take the caller, but we take the principal as an argument. And if it's null, we will return an error. So, oops. Return an error. There is no member associated with this identity / principal. If there is a member, then we want to return it actually. So you can see that the type of the OK is a member. Here, our type was the unit type, so we didn't return anything inside the OK. And now we can, we should return the member. So this was actually something that confused me in the beginning, I remember. But the OK can have a type and the error can have a type. You can see here, error as a type text and OK as a type member. And here it's the error as a type text and OK as no type. So this is essentially to propagate information. For example, you could also have an ID that is returned in the OK or like some kind of other error message or error type. That's something that we can see as well. And it's super useful to have this possibility. Now we need to move to the next task. So, oops. The next one is update member. So update member also is going to be make use of the switch case, but this time it's gonna be different because we want to update the member only if the member already exists. So it's actually a different case. I mean, opposite case actually. So in the case where we don't have any member, this is where we want to return an error saying that there is no member associated. So there is no member. Can actually copy this message. It's okay. But if there is a member, then we want to do members.put. And here there is a common mistake that we should avoid. The mistake that we should avoid is to do this and then return OK. So here it could work because we are putting we are putting inside the hash map for this key, we are putting this member. The problem is that in this scope, in this part of the code, the member value, like the member variable, is associated with this variable that replace this one. So a simple trick is to do new member and to be able to do that. Because otherwise we would replace the member with the old member. So we wouldn't actually update it. And that's that's an issue that I've seen in a few times. So make sure to be careful with that. Implement the update members, that's done. Implement the get all members. So get all members returns us an array of member. This is where we will actually make use of the iterator that we've seen previously, well, that I've talked about this morning, just very quickly. I would say this is something that would be very hard to actually guess if you've never seen it. But you can use, sorry, it's here, dot values to actually access an iterator over all the values in the hash map. So we want to, sorry, it's here. We want to actually get access to all the members that are here and put those members inside an array. So we could use this members.values as a first, I would say, start. So it's an iterator, and we can take a look at what is an iterator. Oops. An iterator is useful to essentially do for loops. So if you're familiar with the for loops, essentially behind the scene, there is an iterator. An iterator is an object that can be called. There is one function, so next, you can call the next, and it returns a value. And when the iterator is finished, it returns null, and you know that the iterator is over. So you essentially have a lot of values that you have to consume, and then once the iterator is done, it returns null, and the loop is over. And you can iterate in Motoko over an iterator by doing for x in iterator, and then you can do something. So for example, we could do, sorry, it's here. I keep forgetting that it's in the tab. We could do for member in member.values. And then we would essentially add our members inside an array, and then we could return the array. So that would be one way to do it. Another way that is a shortcut is actually to take a look at the iter module and to realize that there is a toArray method, consumes an iterator and collects its produce elements inside an array. And so if we use this one, we actually already access what we want. So we need to import iter. And then we can do directly iter.toArray and then members.values. And it will return exactly what we want, which is an array containing all the members. Can I return like this? And that's how you implement the function number 5. Function number 6, which is number of members. This one is fairly straightforward. We've seen that in the hash map, we have size. So dot size here, which returns the number of entries inside the hash map. So actually, it's going to be the number of members in our case. So members.size. And finally, the last one is to implement remove member, which takes no parameter and remove the member associated with the caller. So this essentially is like a unregister function. Like you could imagine that the user call that whenever they want to unregister from the DAO or from the application. And when they call this method, then they are just going to delete their profile. So we can take a look at a method that looks like delete or remove. So delete and remove. We have a choice between the two. The difference is that delete returns deletes the entry with the specific key that you provide, and it returns nothing. Remove is going to return the old value if the old value existed. But in our case, we don't need to return any value. So what we are going to do is just dot delete. And we need to make a switch case because we need to differentiate between if there is a member or if there is no member. And so we will use members.delete. And that's about it. That's good. And now we can deploy our project in the playground. Yeah, so now I can access this. You can see that currently I have no member in my DAO, but if I do this, I'm going to be able to add a member. And now I should see an increase to 1. And I should see my record here. Do you think I can add more members with this from the Candid UI? No, yeah, good answer. Because if I try again, of course, from the Candid UI, we are also having a specific identity. And so we are registered into the DAO. Actually, the identity that you're using from the Candid UI is very specific and like very important to know about because it's the anonymous identity, what's called as the anonymous identity. So if I show you, let's bring back this method. The principle for the local Candid UI and the Candid UI on the ICP, so on the mainnet, are the same. As long as you are not logged in, so you can log in actually. We will see that later, but if you are not logged in by default, you are anonymous. And the anonymous principle is a principle that is shared among like every application. So you will see what I mean. Who am I? I'm going to receive a principle. And you will notice that this principle is actually slightly different than other principle we've seen. It's shorter in size. And this one is a principle that you should almost know by heart. I mean, I'm saying this, but I don't always remember the letters, but I just know that if I see it, I will recognize it. Every time you see this principle, it means that the caller is anonymous. So anonymous means that it doesn't have any key, any public key associated with it. It's just anonymous identity. And every anonymous call will use this principle. So for example, from the Candid UI, but also if you're using DFX, there is an identity which is called anonymous. If you use anonymous, it's gonna be the same principle. So for example, if you build an application and you enable anonymous registration, then there will be a anonymous like identity that everyone is able to access. So you have to keep that in mind, that the anonymous principle, anyone is able to use it. And that concludes our session just on time. So maybe we have some questions. Actually, so for the next session, we are supposed to have a guest, but that won't be for today. So now we just have a mentorship session, and well, actually, we can stay in this call. And I'm guessing that maybe we have some question about this project because it was a lot of new concepts. Do you have any tips on? Yeah, I'm looking at the. Oh, I'm missing a few questions. Okay, Jack, I did it like this. Switch found member, case found member. Yeah, that's great, actually, Jake. You've so I guess you're talking about update member, right? For the code that you're showing. So this code, like, oh no, that's add member, I guess. Yeah, that also works. So in case you're not familiar with the switch case, this underscore enables you to essentially list, like take into account all the possible cases. This one will be activated anytime. And so, of course, in that scenario, it works because either you have a member or you don't have a member. But this one is really useful in case you're using switch case because it enables you to really easily take a lot of cases into account. So why wouldn't we use members.remove? Actually, we could use it. So here we could use it, but members.remove is the same as member.delete. The difference is that member.remove returns the old value. In our case, we don't need the old value. So I decided to use .delete because we don't specify anywhere that we need to return the member. Do you have any tips on breaking down the question to know what syntax you should be using? Well, I guess it's probably also a little bit of my responsibility that the challenges are accessible. I think I want to modify a little bit the course, I guess, because it can be a little bit challenging if you've never seen that. So don't worry. I mean, I don't have any specific tips. Also, you should probably have more time to take a look at all the material. If you've read all the material, then you would probably be more comfortable with the syntax. When are you going to upload? I'm going to upload just after this lecture. So I have been out of time, but this afternoon, so this is our last session of today. We have a short afternoon. So I'm gonna catch up on the recordings. I have already uploaded actually I was doing it while you were coding. I have uploaded the kickoff ceremony on YouTube. So there will be one playlist for the DAO adventure. So the pre-recorded course, all my pre-recorded videos are here. And then the February 2024, so this bootcamp, we have a dedicated playlist and I'm going to upload all the videos, but it takes some time to process it. To even gain access to the module, honestly, I'm a bit embarrassed to say, but I couldn't even get to the exercise. Yeah, don't worry. So that's okay. I guess it's because of the access to the Gitpod that you're struggling, right? So I've already shown it. You just need to go to this repository and then click here, how to get started. Option number 1, open in Gitpod. It will open a workspace. So, okay, maybe you don't have this because maybe you don't have a GitHub account. Let's say you don't have a GitHub account. If you don't have a GitHub account, you need to create one where you can also create a GitLab or Bitbucket. But honestly, GitHub is probably the easiest in the list and the one that you should be using anyway. And then it will open this workspace and you can start your work. I know that sometimes it doesn't work or like there is a little problem, doesn't load. I found that private browsing always work for some reason, at least for uh, uh, almost any cases. I know that some people kind of struggle, but I guess it should work here. Let's see. S- 680,952. And now you have access to your workspace. At least you should wait a few seconds for everything to be set up and you should have access to the workspace. If it still doesn't work, honestly, I think it's better that I help you individually because yeah, I guess it depends on if there is an error message or something. Mine is not loading. Okay, so I want to see what why it's not loading. I want to know why. So I'm probably going to ask you yeah, but I don't want to do it right now. I think it's better if we do it just after this call. I'm going to call you and we have an individual call because it's probably going to take some time to debug. I don't want to bother everyone with that. So just can you send me a DM on Discord? So I got you and then we get in touch. So there is a Statesman and Jason Williams. Guys, let's let's talk after this call so I can help you. Do you run tests on the code we deploy to the playground? Yes, I do. What happens if you fail those tests? Nothing really bad happen. Just you get an error message. So actually I can show you. Like this is the repository for the Motoko Bootcamp website. So I have quite a few things, but one of the things that I have is this backend, which is my backend for the dashboard, and it contains uh, this test folder where I have the test for every single project, like the number one, for example. I run some tests. So essentially, I call your canister through intercanister call, and I do a few tests. So I try some methods, and I do some tests like test one, test two, and it's just basic like intercanister call. And if it doesn't work, then it's just returning a message to your on the website. And the tests are pretty, I would say, pretty flexible. I'm just verifying the basic. But for the graduation, the tests are more involved. Like I really check that all the requirements are fulfilled. So you will see that when we talk about the final project. Anyone has another question? How did you get your main.mo? Again, which one? The main.mo? You mean from this in the Gitpod environment? All the main.mos are located inside days, day one, and then the project for the day two, day three, and so on. Okay, well, I guess if you want to join, we can go on Discord after this call is over and try to debug everyone that has a problem with running the Gitpod. Okay, I don't see any other question. So, quick notes: we were supposed to have more session this afternoon. So this session, mentorship session, is shorter than I expected. But well, let me just remove all of this. We're supposed to have this, so this is now already done. We won't have this one. We will have it later this week. Finding a job in Web3. Ben is gonna come, but he won't be able to come today. And deploy your first application is the workshop that I do every week. But if you are already here, you probably don't need to come up. So you have the afternoon free. I guess we have quite a few things to review from today. There was a lot, so you can take a look at the videos. I'm going to upload them. I'm in the process. And if you have more time, start to work on the project of tomorrow. Yeah. I see everyone tomorrow, and goodbye.